Greeting to everyone. In this lesson, we are going to learn about Leighton Stachey, eminent Victorians. In the 1912, Stachey published his first book on French literary history, Landmarks in French Literature, designed to awaken English reader to the charm of Raisin and French classic. 2 years later, World War One broke out. The war was a direct challenge as Lytton saw it to Bloomsbury pacifist principle. He always used to say, and he always used to ask a question, if a German soldiers tried to rape your sister, what would you do? Strachey slowly replied, I would try to interpose my own body. The war of no consequence of written endless parting in country houses, nor to his writing schedule. He published his major work Eminent Victorians in 1918. Biography of Lytton. Gilles Lytton Strachey was an English biographer and a critic known for his satire of Victorian era. Lytton Strachey was born in London on March 1, 1880. He was the 11th of 13 children of an upper middle class family. His father, Sir Richard Strachey, was a colonial Indian civil servant and a civil engineer and a British Army general. He was a typical Victorian explorer scientist. Sir Richard's second wife was the daughter of Sir J.P. Grand of Rohimorus and was keen on French literature. She influenced Lytton's precocious literary talent. He was a spoiled child of frail health and always withdrawn. Even so, he had an iron will and sat in cultural judgment of the world his parents inhabited, the Victorian era. For primary education, he went to uncongenial upper class boarding schools in Ter- Derbyshire and a Leamington College. He left the petticoat world of Victorian schoolrooms for Liverpool University 1897, where Professor Walter Ralga, his tutor in history and literature, was the main object of little hero worship. He began a new 6 year phase of his life at Cambridge. The world suddenly opened up in 1899. It was Trinity College and later the King's College that he met most of his intellectual friends, among them the philosopher of Murray, the economist Dr. John Maynard Keynes, the novelist Tim Foster, the critic and publisher Leonard Woolf, and the art critic Clive Bell. As Cambridge undergraduates, they were privileged to join a society called the Apostles, an elite, exotic group devoted to the arts and an ambivalent way of life, in which traditional wisdom and customary middle class morals were discarded, especially where sex was concerned. The Apostles were personally affected by philosophy of J. E. Murray. He saw in Murray's doctrine the importance of aesthetic experience and the gospel of personal friendship. He turned a blind eye to Murray's inherent Puritanism. He and Maynard Keynes were often furiously in love with the same male students, and often Keynes won the upper hand. After 40 falling in Cambridge, he went to London to endure 13 years of penny pinching frustration as a weekly reviewer for The Spectator, edited by his pedigreed cousin. He fell in with the Bloomsbury Group, the same sort of society in London as the Cambridge Apostles. One of the leading Bloomsburys was the stream of consciousness novelist Virginia Woolf, the sister of Vanessa Bell. He had previously proposed marriage to Virginia, but she had turned him down. Of all the Bloomsbury, he took precedence. For instance, the Bloomsbury group began to decline after his own death in 1932. In 1912, he published his first book on French literary history, Landmark in French Literature, designed to awaken English readers to the charm of Raisin and French classics. The themes common to the four biographical sketches of the volume were the sacred icon of Victorian sentiment, patriotic fervor, and Christian messianic zeal, The ideal of public school, the humanitarianism as opposed, what he thought were the perils of upper class education. Self interested do goodism and above all the sins of Victorian imperialism. The four objects of Statch's satire were Cardinal H. E. Manning, formerly a prominent Anglican member of Oxford movement, convert to Catholicism in 1851. Thomas Arnold of Rugby School and General Energy Chinese Garden, the fierce hero killed by Magdi riders in the siege of Karatam in 1885. His biographical greed was to paint a picture of the person from the author viewpoint. Never mind the scholarly inhabitant, never mind the search to find the truth of any human situation so far as is possible. He had a laughing admiration for the satiric of the 18th century, like Voltaire. He saw religion as Voltaire saw it as a ludicrous anarchism. Careers in public service were mainly full of political intrigue, but human relationships were the nexus of life itself. He was fairly tall and excessively thin, with a distinguishing vast beard and sterile voice. He wrote, he wore bookworm spectacles. He had an air of sick, melancholic sadness. He said, with true friends, he was quick of mind, caustic, and confidently, bittingly witty. In addition, he was overtly, ardently homosexual. The conspiracy of public silence by which the Apostle Bloomsbury Group and other circles in England kept hidden from the world their sexual proclivities in yet to be studied. His painstaking biographer Michael Holler revealed the statue letters, laying it all out in two volumes in 1967 and 1968. The Bloomsbury would jump from sex to sex in making love. The decline of Stat's reputation came soon after his death. The humbug of eminent Victorian was an easy target is to satire, but it led critics to accuse him of caricature. It's odd for satiristic not to treat the world and its problem as pure comedy. There was an element of thereafter theatre of almost pantomime in Statier's treatment of Victorians. One critic in 1931 isolated one word, preposterous, which Strachey used over and over again about his stick figure characters. Leonard Woolf was on target when he described the critic as a strange character. He died of cancer on January 21, 1932. Analyze of his eminent Victorians. What is the eminent Victorian have in common? Not much. According to life histories detailed within the book, each story is very different and is reflection of background events before which it takes place. For example, Cardinal Manning's story summarizes how the Oxford movement came to take place. The Oxford movement was the movement comprising members of High Church within the Church of England. The High Church basically dictated the theology and intrigue of church and so were an extremely influential body of men. The groundwork behind by Manning eventually led to creation of Anglo-Catholicism, a demonstrational hybrid of Spanish Catholicism and English Anglicanism that would have Queen Elizabeth I turning angry cartwheelers in her grave. Like many of his peers, Cardinal Manning was a truculent man and he did not particularly like working alongside his Anglican equivalent. Manning doesn't come across a victory nice man in his book, rather, as a manipulative and underhand church politician. Thomas Arnold, the second man profiled in this book, doesn't fare much better in the terms of indictment of his general character. Arnold was both a teacher and historian and was primarily responsible for the development of English private school. He did not believe in science and so therefore never advocated teaching it, preferring the classic of Greek, history and literature. He is also created with the development of structured sports in schools, particularly rugby, but He contended that his emphasis on importance of say, physical education would have happened with or without him anyway. Respected and revered Major General Charles George Gordon doesn't fare much better in Strachey's assessment. Also known as Gordon of Khartoum, he was a British army officer who made his name and reputation in the Crimean War and in China, where he put down the rebellion and defeated forces twice the size and number of their races. He was often sent into enemy territory on secret mission by British government. Fundamentalist rebels had overthrown the government of the time, and Gordon was sent in to clear up the military mess that ensued. Florence Nightingale differs from the other subject of the book because she is fried for both her action and her general character. She is a woman before her time, strong, obstreperous, and determined long before women are permitted to be so. In fact, she was almost impossible to get along with on a personal level, but this only had cost the success of her professional achievement. Nightingale accomplishments are all the more admirable when shown in context of the obstructive war office, who were the department of British government in charge of the administration of army during World War One. Florence Nightingale. Nightingale has almost become synonymous with a kind of above and beyond action intent to save lives. In real life, she was founder of modern day nursing, who was highly decorated after World War One. Like most war of its time, its chief cause was religious, chiefly the barbaric treatment of Christians by the Muslim within empire. Nightingale was driven to improve conditions for soldiers who were injured and even garden the nickname the lady with the lamp given because of her avid making rounds her parents by lamplight at night. Although it is suggested that the media at the time usually exaggerated her acts of daring, her contribution to modern nursing cannot be underestimated. She was selfless in her dedication to her passions and was not frightened to confront the war office when she felt that the welfare of the soldiers was not enough of a priority for them. She was also one of the pioneers of girl power, showing that women were just as brave as accomplished men and just as important to the war effort. Cardinal Manning. The first of the key interdenominational defection. Manning was an English cardinal who later became the second Archbishop of Westminster. This conversation from Anglicanism to Catholicism was akin in the quarterback of the New York Giants, signing a contract to play football with the Dallas Cowboys. His conversation to Catholicism was cemented after an evangelical cleric was introduced into Privy Council of Anglican Church, and his subsequent denial of the importance of sacrament forced Manning to leave the church altogether. In his eyes, though Manning is seen as a manipulative turncoat who walked beyond the scene to sabotage Newman's chances of ever becoming cardinal. Despite their previous friendship and despite the kindness that Newman had shown him, Manning, accordingly to Stretchy, was vengeful and spiteful, despite the general adherence to the principle of place to forgiveness. Thomas Arnold. In Britain, there are private schools and private boarding schools for very elite. This, somewhat confusingly to the American reader, are known as public school, which is ironic given the fact that to most of the public they are eminently inaccessible. Thomas Arnold is considered to be the father of this modern education system with its reliance on prefectures, importance of playing sports, and reverence of arts and literature. According to Stage, whilst much of what is credited to Arnold is legitimate and true, he was not in fact responsible for introducing sports into school or for generating an obsession with them that become modern day school spirit. He was also negligent in providing a rounded education because, as a non believer in science, he chose never to introduce it into curriculum to the detriment of his students. Charles George Gordon. Charles Gordon, Gordon of Karatom, Chinese Gordon, whatever name he is known by, there is no dilemma when it comes to the courage and bravery of man who almost single-handedly troubleshoot awkward and problematical military and political situations all over the world on behalf of the British government. His service in China was perhaps his most outstanding. A rebellion had taken over the city and Garner was sent to clean up the situation. But rather than withdraw troops, he refused to leave, digging in and creating the siege, and the minimal troops within were ill equipped to win. William Gladstone. Gladstone was a leader of British Liberal Party for over 60 years, 12 of which were spent as Prime Minister. He was a disestablishment thinker when it came to research, believing that it was far too influential and wanting to dissipate its control over the population. Finally, as a summary, he portraits of Cardinal Manning, Florence Nightingale, Thomas Arnold, and General Charles, Chinese Garden, revolutionary English biography. Until him, biographer had kept an austere distance from that subject. Anything short of adulteration was regarded as disrespect. He, however, announced that he would write lives with a brevity which excludes everything that is redundant and nothing that is significant. His impressionistic portrait occasionally led us inaccuracy, since he selected the fact he liked and had little use for politics or religion, whatever role they might have played in the lives of the subject. Finally, to say about his eminent Victorians as multifaceted, flawed human beings rather than idols, and by informing public knowledge with the private information, he ushered in a new era of biography. Thank you.